Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 8. So, this week we are continuing our work on our second paper. And I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek at next week. Next week, we do have our second peer review. So, I want to give you some encouragement, help you with some of the steps to finishing this draft. And one of those ways that I want to do that is through this assignment this week, which is our using sources to support your argument assignment. And basically, what this is going to do is ask you a series of questions that I'm hoping will help you determine what kind of source would be the most helpful for supporting your argument. You might want to find a source that kind of substantiates claims that you already know you want to make. Like, for example, if you're thinking about the relationship dynamics and you're like, wow, this really sounds like codependency or gaslighting or something like that, like some of these terms that maybe you've heard, you might want to just go find a source that um, gives that definition, that talks through some of the research on that topic. Another way that you can approach this assignment is to think about the counter argument. And one of the things that's hard about this assignment is that we're only getting the original poster's perspective on the case. And you can always scroll through the comments and see if anybody else is giving good perspective. But one thing that can also be really helpful is to find a source that helps you get a little more insight into the counter argument. And so, depending on what the dynamics of your story might be, that might be something to consider. And that's actually what I did when I wrote my sample essay, which you can see it's in the module, it's in the assignment description. And that was because I don't have kids. And so I wanted to find out what are the rules about bringing small children to nice restaurants because I don't really know them from personal experience. And so that was one thing that helped me feel like I was a little bit more confident in the argument that I was making, that it was actually appropriate to have a child there. Um, and so, yeah, go ahead and complete this. I'm hoping that's going to make you feel a lot more confident about the paper. I do want to quickly go over some of these slides from our Analyzing Evidence slideshow. One of the things that I might recommend before you watch this is to go and watch the intros and conclusions video or slides that I've already shared with you, because there is some review of that in this one that I'm going to skim over. But one of the things that might be helpful in here is this sort of suggestion for a thesis statement. And so in here, I have sort of a template for a thesis statement. The main thing that you want to make sure that you do is you just tell us who in the Reddit post has done something wrong. Like, who do you think is to blame? Who do you think did something wrong? And remember that the answers can also be that both people did something wrong or that nobody did anything wrong. Okay. And so just kind of keep that in mind, but you want to make sure that you do have a sense of who you're going to be arguing for or against. And then also, you need to be able to explain briefly why that's the case. And so both of those are going to be part of your thesis statement. Um, and just remember, this is a very brief description of why they were wrong. You're going to get much more detailed when you get into the actual argument itself in the body paragraphs. Um, we talked a little bit about audience last week, and some of the things I want you to be thinking about are making sure that you just are considering that people in the audience might disagree with you, like people who are reading the paper. They might have different experience than you. They might have different perspective than you. Um, they might even have different values. And so all of those things just are good to keep in mind. It doesn't mean that you have to change your opinion, but it should mean that um, you kind of anticipate why people might kind of be defensive of some of the things that you're saying. And you want to make sure that you're presenting them in a way that helps those people listen and understand rather than just be like, never mind, I'm not listening to you. And so that's kind of the main thing I'm talking about here. We do have a straw man fallacy kind of built into this paper because we're only getting one side of the story. And so just make sure that you're not falling for that. Like, make sure that you're considering that the people who are being described in the story might have actual legitimate reasons for why they've done what they've done. And so you might want to do a little bit of speculating, a little bit of imagining, even a little bit of talking to other people to get some perspective on why they might have behaved the way that they did. So I'm going to skim through a lot of this, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is this idea of flow and structure. And so if we look at a regular, academic paper structure, there's going to be three main parts: an introduction, which is going to give us our thesis statement, our body paragraphs, which are going to support the thesis statement, and then a conclusion, which pardon me, essentially is going to tell us what is the significance of the argument. Like, why does this matter? What do we need to do with this information? How does this function in like the bigger picture of society, right? And again, see my previous slideshow on intros and conclusions. Um, so I want to talk about paragraphs today. And the main reason for this is because paragraphs can be a little bit tricky. They're going to actually have almost the exact same structure as a paper, where you're going to start with your main claim. That's going to be in your topic sentence or kind of a mini thesis statement. It's just going to only be the thesis statement for the paragraph. Then you're going to have evidence. And so a lot of times that's going to be a source. It could be an example, like if you're talking about personal experience, that could be evidence. And then analysis, which is going to explain the significance of the evidence. And this is the thing that students tend to skip, and not just students, kind of everybody tends to skip, is analysis, where we assume that the reader knows based on the evidence what we want them to do, what we want them to think about that evidence. And you just want to make sure that you're not skipping the step of connecting those dots for the reader, where you're telling them this is relevant to the case because, or it's important to know how codependency takes place in the Reddit case that I'm discussing today. And it is, and here's how. I'm doing kind of a sloppy job of it, but that's essentially what you want to make sure you're doing, is explaining how the evidence connects to your thesis statement. Okay. And then finally, a transition that's going to connect one paragraph to the next. That one you probably heard of a lot, right? And so if we look at these side by side, and I've color coded them, you can see how the structure is very similar. And this is basically, I'm not sure if this is actually science-based way of thinking about kind of logical order, but this is something that we've gotten really used to in college settings, especially this way of introducing information, where we start with the central claim, we provide support below that, and then we explain the significance of that support. And so if you think about it, it's going to be, each paragraph is really just a microcosm of the paper itself. And I have a little activity at the end here just to get you thinking a little bit about how you explain evidence. And it's based on Ace Attorney, which is a game that I really love. But I'm going to go ahead and end this here so we can keep it short. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck with your writing.